Imagine sitting in your living room on a quiet Sunday afternoon, sipping coffee, thinking life is normal, stable, solid, when suddenly your doorbell rings. You open it, and a stranger is standing there holding documents, photos, and a marriage certificate, all claiming that the woman you've been married to for 11 years is actually his wife. Because that's what happened to me, and my name is Jacob Miller, a 46-year-old accountant from Ohio who believed I knew everything about the woman I built a life with. A woman named Natalie who laughed softly, cooked beautifully, loved quietly, and carried a mystery beneath her smile that I mistook for shyness. But I wasn't ready for the truth, not even close. And nothing could have prepared me for the day a man I had never seen in my life stood at my door and completely tore the ground out from under me. But to really understand the shock that hit my chest like a freight train, you need to understand who I was before this moment. Because for years I lived under the illusion that I had the kind of marriage people envied, no fights, no big problems, just a simple life with a woman who I thought cherished me. A woman who told me she had a difficult past she didn't like to talk about, and I respected that, thinking everyone has a few things they'd rather keep locked away. But her secrets weren't small, or painful, or embarrassing. They were life-shattering, identity-breaking, truth-obliterating. And it all began on the day I opened my door to a man named Samuel Reed. He looked calm. Too calm. The unsettling kind of calm that tells you he rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. And he didn't ease into anything. He didn't ask if I was Jacob. Didn't introduce himself gently. Didn't even blink. The moment I cracked the door open, he looked straight at me and said, "I need to speak to you about your wife." She's my wife too. My brain refused to process it. For 3 seconds I just stared at him, half expecting someone to jump out with a camera yelling prank. But Samuel reached into his bag and pulled out a set of documents, sliding them slowly toward me like he was afraid I'd slam the door in his face. A marriage certificate dated 14 years ago. Photos of him and Natalie smiling together, texts between them from years earlier, and a legal ID showing his name and address. My jaw tightened. My hands trembled. "This is insane," I muttered, but he simply said, "I can explain everything, please." Against every instinct screaming at me to slam the door shut, I stepped aside and let him in, because the proof was too real, too detailed, too impossible to dismiss. We sat at the table, the same table where Natalie and I ate hundreds of dinners, laughed over silly stories, planned trips, celebrated anniversaries, and now I was sitting there with a stranger holding physical proof that the woman I loved wasn't who she said she was. I asked him to start talking, and he did, with a heaviness in his voice that told me he wasn't there for drama or revenge. This wasn't some scammer, this wasn't some jealous ex. This was a man carrying pain as deep as mine was about to become. "Her real name isn't Natalie," he said. "It's Elena." My pulse quickened. My wife, or the woman I thought was my wife, had a different name? Different identity? Different life? He continued, "We married 14 years ago in North Carolina. She disappeared 2 years later. No goodbye. No trace. She just walked out one morning and never came back." He swallowed hard. "I spent years searching for her, years." I shook my head, stunned, because Natalie had told me she was never married, that she'd been focused on her career before meeting me, that relationships weren't something she ever took seriously. But Samuel's eyes, overflowing with a pain I recognized, told me he wasn't lying. I asked him the question burning through my chest. "Why now? Why did you come here? How did you even find us?" He took a deep breath and said the line that collapsed my world completely. "Because last month I got a message from her, and she told me everything." My stomach dropped. A message from her? Why him and not me? Why would she reach out to him after disappearing for over a decade? As if reading my thoughts, he added, "She told me she was ready to confess. She said she was living a double life, that she made mistakes she couldn't undo. She said she wanted to fix it all." His hands clenched into fists. "But she didn't tell me where she was. She didn't tell me who she became." So he started searching again and finally found her through an old acquaintance of hers who still recognized her face. She didn't tell me she married someone else, he said quietly. When I found your address, I didn't know what I'd find here. I didn't know if she'd be here with you or if she'd vanished again. That's when I realized something terrifying. Natalie wasn't home. She'd left early that morning saying she had a dentist appointment. There was no dentist appointment on the calendar. My breath hitched. Something was wrong. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, something twisted in my gut told me she knew Samuel was coming. She knew her secrets were unraveling. And she ran again. My voice shook as I asked him, "Do you have her message? The one she sent you?" He nodded and pulled out his phone. The message was short, just 3 sentences. "I'm sorry for disappearing." I was scared. "I need to fix everything before it's too late." Too late for what? Fix what? And why send that message to her first husband instead of the man she'd been living with for 11 years? Before I could think of what to do next, Samuel looked at me with an expression that sent chills down my spine. "Jacob, there's more." He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. I unfolded it, and my hands went numb. It was a medical diagnosis. Stage 3 ovarian cancer. Dated 6 months ago? My throat closed. My wife, or Elena, had cancer. She never told me. She never mentioned a symptom, a test, nothing. She hid everything from me. Samuel exhaled shakily. She sent that to me too. I think that's why she contacted me. She thought I deserved the truth before. He couldn't finish. I couldn't either. My entire marriage cracked open. Every memory, every kiss, every late-night conversation, suddenly carrying a second meaning. Who was she really? Who was I to her? Was I her second chance or her second lie? Samuel wasn't angry with me. In fact, he apologized. "I'm not here to take anything from you," he said quietly. "I just needed answers, and I think you do too." He was right. Because the longer we sat there, the clearer it became. Natalie hadn't just been hiding her past. She'd been living like someone running from a life she couldn't face, from mistakes she couldn't undo, from a truth she wasn't ready to confront. But now that truth was spilling into our lives whether she wanted it to or not. That night, she didn't answer my calls. She didn't come home. Her phone went straight to voicemail. At midnight, Samuel and I sat together in the living room. 2 men connected by 1 woman, waiting for someone who might never walk through the door again. And at 2:13 a.m., my phone finally buzzed. A text from her. "I'm sorry, Jacob. I'm sorry for everything. I'm going to the hospital." My heart nearly stopped. I grabbed my keys and rushed out. Samuel followed without hesitation. When we arrived at the hospital, the front desk told us she had been admitted an hour earlier, alone, and when we walked into her room, she looked up at us with eyes full of guilt, exhaustion, and something that broke me completely, relief. She whispered, "I didn't want you two to meet like this." She told us everything that night, in a trembling voice between breaths and tears. She met Samuel young, panicked after a family tragedy, married him during a time when she didn't know who she was or what she wanted. After a huge fight, she told herself she'd come back, but never did. She changed her name, moved states, built a new life, met me. Fell in love for real this time, but was terrified her past would destroy everything. She didn't know how to confess without losing me. Then the diagnosis came, and she couldn't run anymore. She reached out to Samuel thinking she owed him closure. She planned to tell me too. But fear got her first. We stayed by her side all night, not as rivals, not as enemies, but as 2 men trying to untangle the same impossible knot. The next months were a blur of treatments, painful conversations, therapy sessions, and legal processes to fix the mess she left behind. She fought hard for her life, for the truth, for forgiveness, but in the end, her illness won. She passed away 7 months later. And at her funeral, Samuel stood on one side of her casket, I stood on the other. 2 husbands grieving the same woman in different ways. 2 lives changed forever by the secrets she carried. Today, Samuel and I still talk. Not because of her, but because of the strange, painful, Unbreakable bond formed the day he showed up claiming to be my wife's husband. And proved it.